Okay, so this is the template that I use that I am giving credit to Dark Falcon on S2KI. There's a pretty good thread by him that sparked me to do these backing plates, and this is the template he provided. And there are some, you'll notice that there are some dimensions included, however, it's not fully defined. So here's a couple pictures of the flat stock that I cut by 4 inches wide, 10 inches tall, and there's a couple extra dimensions here for the angular cutouts that clears the spot weld inside the trunk. So this should fully define the part if you follow these guidelines right here. And here we are with them laying on the trunk lid. So the profile's all been cut out with an angle grinder, and I cleaned it up on the belt sander to deburr all of it. And what I'm doing is using the painter's tape. First hole will be about in the center of this, and I'm kind of just laying it on top of the painter's tape. I'm trying to use my vise to strategically bend them to match the curvature of the trunk the best I can. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, but you can get pretty close just by bending it by hand. And when it tightens down, it'll suck it up anyway. But so now that this part is done, and the curvature of the trunk is matched pretty well with these pieces, I'm gonna line the back of this with painter's tape and then try to slide them in the inside. I have a couple magnets that I'm gonna try to stick on the skin of this to see if it'll suck it up and hold it nicely on the underneath. Then I can go ahead and just use a Sharpie through the holes that I drilled earlier in the trunk lid and mark the 3 holes on here to drill out. Alright, so you'll see underneath the holes is bare steel right now, so I'm going to go ahead and mark these 3 locations. I'm using magnets right here, pulling that sheet metal right up to the surface of the skin there. And I'm just going to scribe with the Sharpie all the lines and then fish the plate out. Do the same to the other side, and then use the same size cutter, the 8mm 5/16 inch cutter from my RotoCut kit, and then zip those holes out, and then the plates will be ready for paint. And I'm going to hit them with probably some black spray paint. Alright, so to start, I marked the first hole closest to the front of the car here with a ruler. So I measured 1.5 inches from the center here, 1.5 inches from the top down, put a center mark there just so I know where I am, not looking at a huge piece of steel underneath there to mark the first hole. So I do that, and then I kick this side over when it's in there as far as I can, because you'll hit a limit. And you'll see in the first one I did here, this is where the 3 holes came out. That's the first one I marked with the ruler, and then that one lands about in the middle, and this one kind of kicks back close to the edge here. I couldn't kick it over as far as I'd hoped. There's about 1 inch, maybe a little bit more than 1 inch here. Let's see, 1.25 inches about that it's offset from the center. So there is a lot of material out here, not really doing anything, but that's kind of the method I'm going to use. And I'll show you how to slide this in now. This is a little bit tricky. So this side's a little tighter than the other side. I didn't have nearly as much problem with that side to get this in, but I'm sliding it in the back side first at an angle, and then this cutout will eventually be like right here. So I'm gotta get it in and kind of rotate it through these, get your fingers in these little holes here and help feed it up through. That was tough to film with one hand, but you can see it up in the top there, kind of going back and forth in this angle. Just slide it up like that, and now you can work from the top because the magnets sucked it up to the lid and it's not going to fall. Alright guys, so both plates now have the holes marked for where to center punch, and I'm going to go ahead and do that now, center drill, and then, like I said before, use the RotoCut, cut those 4 holes, and then these plates are all complete besides paint, and I'll wait till it gets a little warmer out to paint. And nearing the end here of the CR wing install, I'm going to drop this wing off tomorrow, as well as the wing stands, to get the wing painted red and the wing stands painted like a semi-gloss black. Alright guys, so I picked up some hardware here. These are all stainless steel button head screws here with their M6 by 10mm, and I also picked up the stainless steel matching washers with them from a local hardware store. Those are going to secure these bumpers here. Here's how they look installed. Pretty nice on both sides. Pretty clean looking. Next, I'm going to have to do the dreaded task of drilling holes through the body and putting on the trickiest ones of all, 2 pieces that mate with this when the downforce is achieved, to actually have them make contact and brace the trunk solid for the wing to provide the downforce. So just got the wing back from the body shop doing the paint work, Looks phenomenal. New Formula Red match to the car. Now, the work was done by Collision and Chrome in New Windsor, New York, so shout out to them. They've done some other work for me too, and they always do a phenomenal job. And you'll see I don't have the wing stand covers on yet. I'll show you those in a second, but just showing you the wing here with the fresh paint job. Just sitting on the trunk right now. Next thing I'm going to do is buff the trunk and then ceramic coat it with some turtle wax ceramic spray just to make it perfectly nice and shiny before I limit my access with a polisher across here, because I did peel a replica AP2 lip spoiler off of here before I install this, and there's a lot of clear coat issues right here that I'm hoping to correct. The wing stand covers came out really well. We did them in black, and then the accent, so that when it's installed you don't see the tab sticking out, is done to paint match the wing. Now this is the correct way you paint these stand covers. I've seen pictures online of them done all black and they forget to mask and body match the color up here, and it looks kind of goofy when you look at the car from behind. But this is why Honda sells the OEM stand covers in different part numbers for different colors of your car. You'd think that they were all black, but there's different part number for the CRs to have the Apex blue, the yellow, the white, and the black. You know, if you have a Berlina black car, this would be all black, but that is the difference right there. And like I said earlier in the video, these stand covers from Honda are like $115 a piece. Not for a set, for a piece. So if all this was OEM right here, it'd be almost $500 of stand covers. So with the replica EOS and the paint job, I think we're sitting at $650 now for total investment into this wing, and then the trunk was about $250 excluding shipping. I just finished doing a one-step paint correction with Chemical Guys VSS and a Torx X polisher I just picked up. I'm going to try to do that to the whole car eventually, but it just takes so much time that I'm only doing the trunk right now. Reason being, it's a lot easier to do the trunk before you install the wing. So if you did pick up a spare trunk, or you're drilling your OEM trunk and it's got a lot of swirls and stuff, now's the time to do a little paint correction to it, and then ceramic coated is what I'm going to do. So I got this cleaned up really nicely. I clay barred it, cleaned it, and then did the compound to get some of the scratches out. There is still some remains of the tape that secured the aftermarket lip spoiler to this, but I got probably 90% of them out. I'm pretty happy with it. So what I'm going to do next is, I haven't applied any wax or sealant or ceramic coating to this yet. So what I'm going to do is install the gaskets that comes with the EOS wing over these holes now on each side, and just so the adhesive has a fresh surface to bite to and it's not going to peel up or anything gripping to a wax or a ceramic coating over the clear coat here. So these are the two gaskets they give you. It's just like a foam gasket, and just make sure you line it up and make sure you're putting it on the right side, because they are contoured to the wing stands. So I'm making sure this is going to go on the right side, or the passenger side of the car. I'm just lining it up on here to verify this is the correct way. I'm going to take this, peel the release liner off of it, line it up with these holes, and put it on the trunk. Alright, so I got my gaskets installed here, and it was a little tricky. I did this side pretty perfect, and then this side was a little bit of a screw up. I kind of stuck down real quick on me, and I kind of tried to peel it up, and I tore the edge of it a little bit there, but I don't think that'll affect anything. It's definitely tricky to get all the holes lined up by eye on this. I was thinking about putting them over the wing and then just dropping it on, but I didn't want any kind of creases to form. I wanted to kind of lay it out nicely by hand. I'll put the wing on it now and show you guys how much the edge of this kind of sticks out, or maybe is receded in from the edge of the plastic covers. Alright, so here's how it looks just sitting on the trunk, not bolted down yet. And you can see that the gasket doesn't really stick out at all. It's got a pretty high tolerance cut on it to match the profile of the wing stand. I'll show you a top view here. Doesn't really stick out at all much. Tiny bit on the right side, but I could use the slop in the holes to kind of massage it one way versus the other. And then this side I have pretty much dead nuts in the center. Come down, look at this. Sticking out ever so slightly on this side, slightly recessed on this side. So that's how the red looks underneath when you paint the wing stand. So it kind of cleans up the look of the wing stands here with this just straight black line as opposed to having the bubble out the side when you look at it from the rear of the car, because this wing does have quite an angle to it looking at it from the rear. On the sides, the center kind of is more flat, but the sides of this definitely you can see from behind the car, so looks really, really awesome when you mask it correctly. So these are the plates I made, as you saw earlier. I painted them flat black. They've been drying for a couple days. I'm sure they're gonna get scratched up when I go to put them in there. Maybe a good idea for here is if you want to hit them with like truck bed liner coating or something. I'm not gonna bother. I don't really have the time to go out to the store and paint these again because I want to get this wing installed. Like I said, you know, when you slide it in between the trunk, it's probably gonna scratch some of the paint off, so you will have bare steel exposed. But I'm not worried about this really rusting out. If the seals work, there should be no water getting inside the trunk around the wing, so maybe just moisture and stuff would cause this to surface rust, but I never really drive the car much in the rain unless it's raining on track, so these should be plenty good enough of a coating. All right, so this is how I slide in this side. This side's eventually gonna be pointing at the top, but I'm gonna slide it in first, just like that. Then I'm gonna reach my hand in this hole here, kind of spin it, and that wasn't as difficult as I thought. All my holes line up perfectly as I drilled before, and there's a little bit of squeeze to it, so it kind of stays in place when you put it there. The original time I used magnets on the opposite side of the trunk, but now I have it paint corrected, so I don't want to do that. Alright, so there we go. Both backing plates are in. As you can see here, those are all lined up ready for the wing. Same with this side, all lined up. Well, it kind of fell a little bit, but you know what I mean. So both of those sit in there like that, ready for the grand finale here. Alright, so the wing is fully secured, guys. The first thing I did was I set it on the trunk, and I left the trunk sitting about like that, and I took one of the bolts in my hand here, and I left the trunk like this with my hand, the bolt in my hand, and I started with the easiest ones to access, the front ones. So I threaded and I felt for the hole in the wing stand and got these two started. And then once that was started, I snugged them up a little bit by hand. Then I could lift the trunk up, and when I did that, I was able to use a long socket. So I got the 10mm nuts started on the rear, on the studs of the wing stand, and I kind of tightened those down by hand, just snugged them up, and then I put the center ones in, everything lined up perfectly, and just kind of went back and forth between them, like a half a turn with a ratchet. Just very, you know, 1/4 inch ratchet, not much torque to secure them down, because the whole time you're doing that, you're compressing this gasket, so you don't want to just overload it quick, and you don't want to torque these down so hard you crack the plastic covers. So I just got them pretty snug, and didn't really use a torque wrench or anything on them, just felt it by hand. And you could see kind of the gasket sticking out a little bit in some of the areas here, but nothing too noticeable. So the plan came together here just like I imagined. I'm pretty happy with the way everything's coming together. The next thing I have to do is secure this. Now on an OEM S2000 that's not a CR, this wire loom goes inside this hole and traces through the cavity all the way and then pops out by the hinge, by the latch up here in the rear brake light. But on a CR, if you've ever looked at a CR, they have like a couple extra drilled holes here where there are zip tie mounts, and the wire just stays on the outside of the trunk. They don't bother running it through there, maybe because it interferes and you don't want to put a bolt through it and strip a wire or something. So what my plan is there is I'm not going to drill anything, but I'm just going to use a couple adhesive back tie wrap mounts to stick on here and put a zip tie around, just so this little bit of wire slack here. You know, you grab the OEM pickup point here, but there's just a little slack here that could be managed. So it might be a good idea too to just wrap the remaining bit of this in electrical tape so it looks black all the way through. Maybe if you have some extra black conduit to put that over too to make everything match. But those are just finer details. Everything works right now. Brake light works and everything. And really everything's complete here. And besides one last thing, which is the most dreaded part, is what I see, because it's something you can't replace. It's putting the mating part to these pieces on the frame of the car. Now, you might think that's not a big deal if it was an adhesive, but the pieces that are supposed to go through the body of the car here have studs sticking out of them. So that means it's intended to drill 2 holes in each side of the car in that area to press these in, and then the adhesive sticks over top. So these 2 studs press into a hole, and then the adhesive seals them off from any water getting inside the hole. But these are just the angled pieces that piece on the trunk mates up to with the adjustment slots and whatnot. So this is the final step to finishing this job, and probably the most nerve-wracking one, since you drill the holes in the body and there's no going back, and if you put it in the wrong spot and it doesn't line up, you're kind of screwed. So I'm definitely going to measure 8 times on this one to get this right. So I've made an executive decision here. I'm going to cut these tabs off and not drill through the car. And the reason I made that decision is I don't think these tabs are there for structural purposes at all. They're hot. They got this huge section missing in the middle, so you can easily fold them over. So they're pretty hollow, and I measured the outer diameter of the stud here, and it doesn't taper down at all like it's going to snap in. There's a rib on the back side of this that if you were to push it in, this pin's not going to like clip in and resist pulling out. If you left the release liner on the adhesive and did a test fit, it wouldn't clip in. It's just there to, I believe it's for a guide for when you have a CR and they were assembling them from the factory. You know, the holes would have been drilled in the body by a jig or a robot or something with a high tolerance, and not by hand, just freely with a drill, like I would have to do. So there's no way that these plastic tabs have any retention force to them. They're pretty much just alignment pins, I believe, and I think this thing will be structurally as sound if you remove the studs and cut them off with like an X-Acto knife and just apply this piece with the VHB tape directly to the painted surface on the car. This VHB tape's extremely strong, so I don't think it's going to kind of peel itself off when the downforce hits it. If anything, since it's going to be sitting in the car like that and the trunk wedges down on it, it's going to push the adhesive into the frame of the car even more, and nothing's really going to pull this off. So I'm going to cut these pieces off. If I have severe problems with it later on, where I notice these are like deforming because I didn't leave the studs on, I'll just order 2 more of these. I think they were like $5 or $6 a piece. Maybe they were $10 a piece. I don't really remember from the order, but they're nothing crazy money. So I really want to avoid drilling through the car if I don't have to, and that doesn't, drilling through the car really won't provide any structural benefit to these. Okay, so I broke off the tabs by hand, and then I used a Dremel here to just file down very carefully the remains of that stud so that the adhesive is always higher when you press it on the car, and there won't be any little plastic bits remaining from the studs pushing against the adhesive. So you got nothing but adhesive here, and this is kind of the tip I used on my Dremel just to get in there very carefully and then scrape those pieces off. So before you stick this on the car, clean the area with isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to show you that area here in a second, but coat that area, let it dry, then peel the release liner off of this and press it on. Alright, so the area you want to look to stick these on, there's this little contour in the body right here. A giveaway is you'll see where the OEM stops hit on the trunk, right? They leave a mark here in the circular disc in the body of the car. And right in the center of it is pretty much where these will be, seeing how that is in the center of it. So this has a 45-degree cut at the top here, kind of to match the contour of the body right there. So when you install it, make sure this is up the right way. Make sure you have the angled surface pointing up, and there's a little lip on the top that's going to kind of hang over the radius of the body right here. So there's no super exact science to this, just make sure it sits nice and even there, and press it on and hold it, and then you can adjust these. I'm thinking of using a piece of paper when the trunk is closed down in between them to kind of feel, make small adjustments with these, loosen them, tighten them to make this pretty much just touch this with the trunk down. You don't want it jammed into it yet because the trunk will start to flex, and when the wing produces a little bit of downforce, then they will bind together and brace the trunk. So I've read online that you don't really want this to be adjusted to where it closes on this and has a ton of pressure on it in its neutral position, because when you're at like 120 miles an hour, the wing's going to be pushing down on the trunk quite a bit, and that's when you want this to make full contact. So I'm thinking like a sheet of paper will be a good feeler gauge. And you guys may let me know in the comments if you have other methods you suggest on how to do this, but this is just kind of how I'm going about it. Hey guys, so I'm officially calling this job complete now. So if you're still listening, you probably watched the length of all 3 videos, so I want to thank you guys for giving me that support, and I hope you found this helpful. I'll just give you guys one final look at underneath the trunk here of what I did with these. These are all adjusted to just basically kiss these supports down here when the trunk is closed in its natural position now. I got 2 adhesive back tie wrap mounts routing this cable, just like the CR would. There's the backing plates and the hardware sticking out. I know I mentioned earlier in the video I was worrying about these getting all chipped up and stuff when I installed them. However, I highly recommend getting the feel for it and how to twist it and get it in there before you paint it, because when I put these in, it went extremely smooth, and I don't think I nicked the paint at all on them, so I'm not even going to worry about that. And you can see the other bumpers are up here. These contact the bumper down here and here, and then of course these downforce pieces here contact the body here. Like I said, I didn't drill or anything with these. These are just pressed on there, and they are extremely solid on there, so definitely don't need to drill your car in my opinion, but feel free to if you want to. Last comment is the weight of the trunk with the spoiler on it and the backing plates is definitely noticeable with the OEM trunk springs. If you let go of the trunk at about a 45-degree angle, it will slam shut, but you can fix that by ordering the OEM CR trunk springs if you want. I don't really feel like spending the money to do it, because if you lower it down a couple inches from closing and you let go of it, it closes nice and perfect. Quick look at it on the car again. One last comment I wanted to make is, I know how I might have done one of these steps backwards, so definitely do it whichever way you want, but I think the correct way to do the gasket on the trunk is to actually do the reverse, is to not stick it to the trunk and to stick it on the bottom of the wing stand and the steel wing mounts. Only reason I kind of found that out is I installed the whole thing without really looking at the eBay instructions, since they weren't that helpful, but pretty much the only thing they tell you on both sides, it's kind of funny, it's the same thing repeated, is it's saying to install the weather stripping on the bottom of the wing stand and then set the wing on the car. So I did the opposite, but it should still seal just fine. Thinking about it, I probably should have done it this way, because if you ever wanted to remove the wing from the trunk and take this adhesive strip off, if you didn't stick it to the trunk, it would come right off with the wing. However, now it's like a foam adhesive, and I'm sure it's a nightmare to get off the trunk if I were to take the CR wing off this trunk and drill other holes for like a 9 Lives Racing wing in the future or something. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It may be miserable to take off. But thank you guys for watching this video series. I'll report back with future videos this year of how it performs on the track. I'll probably stick a GoPro on the back window to just watch it at high speeds to see if it's bouncing around like crazy, how solid it is. But when it's got the backing plates and it's mounted on the trunk, I mean, this thing is extremely solid. It's not like a 9 Lives Racing wing or something, or a chassis mounted wing where you can jump up and sit on it. I don't know how sturdy the OEM CR wing is, but if I push down on this, you can see it does flex a little bit, but I'm not sure if that'll flex on track or not, or if I'm just putting a point load on the edge here that's unrealistic here. But definitely will report back on the results, how the car feels on the track. Like I said, I didn't change anything else about the car. I'm still running the 12K springs up front with the Öhlins DFV, 10K in the rear. After reading a lot online, people say that the CR wing doesn't really give a ton of downforce. It should really just help with stability at high speeds and eliminate lift. So I don't think it'll change the setup of the car too much. So previously when I ran at New Jersey Motorsports Park and some of the other higher speed tracks, the rear end does feel a little light when you're braking at like 125 miles an hour. It definitely dances around without a wing. So if this just adds a little bit of stability at high speed, I'll be extremely satisfied with it. Definitely keeps me legal still for SCCA, STR autocross, and T4 in time trials. That's tuner 4 for SCCA time trials. So I'm really excited to get this thing out on the track this year, and I'll report back on how it does. Thanks for watching, guys. Like I said, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.